Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to do some more Pwned labs and we're doing a completely free lab. So even if you do not have a Pwned lab subscription, you are welcome to join me. We can work through this lab together. We can learn together. And hey, what might make this a little bit of a different approach than other videos that you watch is I have not prepped it. I haven't even looked at this room myself. So I'm looking at it for the very first time and we will kind of struggle through this together, see what we can learn. But it's completely free. I'll put a link to the lab in the description of this video. So if you want to, go ahead and pull up the lab, pause my video, start the lab, and when your lab is started, unpause me, and let's do this together. But the lab that we are going to do is identify the AWS Account ID from a public S3 bucket. I do just want to say, if you've never heard of Pwned Labs, you need to check it out. Pwned Labs offers hands-on cloud security training, both red team and blue team, and they cover Azure, AWS, and GCP, and there are over 30 completely free labs for you to do. And hey, even a premium subscription, y'all, is only $200 a year, which is going to give you access to the cyber ranges. The first cyber range is coming out in April, called Thunderdome. It is a realistic enterprise environment spanning across AWS, Azure, and GCP with a total of 9 flags, and I have early access to it, so I can actually say from hands-on experience, it is amazing. Like not one of the coolest cloud lab I have stumbled across myself. So the $200 a year will give you access to that cyber range when it releases in April. But this one, as I said before, is a completely free lab. So you don't need to have a subscription. You can pull it up and we can work through this together. So identify the AWS account ID from a public S3 bucket, and we are given our entry point of creds and an IP address. And one thing just to draw your attention to is some Pwned labs, it feels weird to say Pwned labs, some labs are suitable for a CTF approach, and it will let you know. If it's suitable for a CTF approach, it means you can kind of treat it like a black box. Think about Hack the Box, where you're just given an IP and you dive into it. Other ones are more of a guided lab, and that's what this one is. It's not suitable for a CTF approach, so more of a guided lab. But we're going to kind of treat it like both. We'll stumble through it a little bit on our own. We'll go through the walkthrough. We'll go back and forth. And like I shared before, I haven't looked at this lab at all, so I don't even know what to expect, but it's going to be fun. We're going to learn through it together. The first thing I'm going to do is let's get our notes pulled up. I use Cherry Tree, but you can use whatever note thing you prefer. Let me open up a file and notes.ctb. I think this is the right one. Okay, good. I have one for Thunderdome as well, but obviously you guys can't see Thunderdome yet until it comes out. And then once the flags in Thunderdome are found, I'm not going to stream it right away because I want people to be forced to work through it on their own. But once all the flags are found, I will stream Thunderdome and walk you through that enterprise lab as well. I just changed my code front as well. For some reason on this VM, my preferences here in Cherry Tree reset every time. But let's go ahead and start a new Cherry node, and we'll call this, I already forgot the name, so account ID from S3 bucket. We'll just call it that. And we will go ahead and do credentials, so the credentials that we're starting with. And if you're totally new to AWS and you don't know what an access key ID or secret access key is, hey, welcome to the video. I will guide you through this step by step to help you understand it. But let's go ahead and grab our access key ID here. Access keys are sort of like a username and password for AWS, but I will show you how to authenticate and everything with these access keys. And we also have an IP, so maybe a web server or something that's running here. So we'll go ahead and grab our IP. DatTail said, switching to Twitch from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is awful. I know, like, yo, LinkedIn, step yo game up, bruh. Like, I'm happy I get to stream to LinkedIn, but it's so hard to do this. Okay, Adriana said because LinkedIn is awful, it never loads them. Restream does work. I'll find you on YouTube. Yeah, okay, cool. YouTube or Twitch, Adriana. Twitch is hacksmarter.live. We'll bring you to the Twitch page. Otherwise, just search for my name on YouTube and you'll be able to find me. But here we are. Here are our credentials. We'll make... Oh, you're DatTail. I found you on Twitch. Okay, cool. I wouldn't have connected Adriana to DatTail, but hey, it works. Are you going to be streaming, Adriana, on Twitch as well, or just LinkedIn when you stream on Friday? What is your plan? All right, secret access key, blah, blah. So let's grab our scenario. We'll just kind of call this our scope, and we'll read through this together and see what we're working with. I actually want to do just text. There we go. We'll make this H1 and make it a little bit bigger. So here is our scenario. In a world increasingly reliant on cloud technologies, the ability to expose and leverage even the smallest oversights has become a coveted skill. Amidst this backdrop, a leading tech enterprise has reached out to our specialized cyber team, that is Hack Smarter Security, for assistance and have provided the IP address of their website. Okay, so it is a web server. Your objective, use this IP to pinpoint their AWS Account ID via public S3 bucket so we can commence the process of enumeration. So we're kind of in the information gathering process of maybe more of a red team engagement. And Adriana said both. Okay, cool. So Twitch and LinkedIn is where she will be streaming. But let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, because we're given an IP, it's likely maybe just a web server, but we should scan the entire IP and see if there's anything else that is listening. So we're going to grab this IP first. Before we do anything with these credentials, let's just grab this IP. And let's use Rust scan. We'll use Rust scan -A is to pass it our target. That's our IP. And the cool thing about Rust scan is you can then pass the outcome of Rust scan over to Nmap. So we can say, hey, whatever ports are open, run this Nmap script on it. And the way we do that is we do this double dash, which I think just means, hey, pass it over to Nmap. And then I wanted to do the -A flag on Nmap. What that tells Nmap to do is run basically all the enumeration scripts at it. And hey, because Adriana's here, learn this from TCM. I learned this Nmap command from doing his PEH course. But let's go ahead and do that. Right away, we see we have port 80 open. For those of you who know pen testing, know security, you know that port 80 is likely going to be HTTP, which means a web server. So we can go ahead and begin checking that out right away. And the other thing we can do is let's go ahead and open up Cato. You guys heard me talking about Cato before I started recording for the live stream. But if you've never heard of Cato, Cato is a web auditing proxy tool. Think about like Burp Suite, but a lot more affordable, written from the ground up in Rust. And if you've ever used Burp Suite Community Edition, the free version of Burp Suite, and you try to do an intruder attack, you know that the rate limiting makes intruder attacks nearly impossible. A free version of Cato, there is no rate limiting. You can do full intruder attacks, however many threads you want, without being rate limited. And a premium sub to Cato is only about $10 a month, well worth the money and way more affordable than Burp Suite Pro. So let me show off Cato. We'll pull Cato up. And you'll see I updated it recently. So I used to use a CLI, but I started using the desktop instance of Cato because they have built in a web browser. So you think about Burp Suite's web browser is that proxy. Cato, for a long time, just did the proxy through the browser, but now they have a web browser built into the platform. We'll see if it all works for me, because I don't think I tested it after installing it. While that pulls up, we can just navigate to the web server ourselves. Let me go ahead and grab the IP here, and we'll just do HTTP that. Maybe. Don't fail on me. Did I kill it? Here, let's make sure I can ping it. No, what happened? Did my Rust scan like kill the server? Guys, I may have killed the server with Rust scan. Oh no, that's not good. No, you don't need a VPN. You do not need a VPN for the free labs. And this is a public IP, so you don't need to be on the VPN to hit this public IP. The web server crashed though. I mean, that is something you might encounter in the real world. Let me just turn the lab off. We'll give it a few minutes and I'll give some story time. But even in a real pen test, that is something you want to be careful of not killing web servers. Let me go ahead and turn the lab back on. I'll just refresh it. Oh, you can actually see, there it is. It's loading now. Just slowly. See how we have Mega Big Tech right there? Let me turn the lab back on. Does it give me the same IP? Is that the same IP I had before? There it is. So I don't know if I wonder if, for those of you doing the lab with me, let me know if you have the same IP. Maybe we were all scanning at the same time and we just like momentarily DOSed the web server. But it is back online, and like I said before, you don't need to be on a VPN, so anyone can hit this web server. So maybe we broke it. We broke it in some way. Let me do an in-map scan just on that port though. I don't think that'll be too aggressive for it. We'll let that kind of run in the background. And here we have Cato pulled up. We will go ahead and create a project, and we'll just call this like S3, maybe something like that. And there we go. We can actually see our scan is done. So I'm going to grab that and drop it in my notes here. So we do have an Apache web server that is running. I don't know if there's other things on here, but I'm guessing it's just the web server. And 2.4.52 is a relatively new version of Apache, so it's not going to be some like crazy CVE that we find and it pops up. Wizar said it's the same IP. So yeah, I think the issue is because I'm live streaming and you guys are following along with me. It may just be all of us were hitting this machine. So stop scanning it. Don't break the machine. Be nice to it. It's shared infrastructure for the free labs. The premium labs, you get on the VPN, you have a private one. But I suppose the free labs, that's the price of it being free, is we're all hitting the same box right now. But let me show you Cato. Don't even know if we're going to need it, but let's go ahead and open up Cato. Looks like we already have an update available for it, but we can go ahead and open up a Cato browser, and we'll just use Chrome. And then we don't have to worry about any of the configurations. So let me go ahead and just grab this IP again, and we'll open it in our Cato browser here. And we'll go ahead and just make sure everything is working. I'm going to throw Cato over to the side, and we'll throw this browser over to the side. And if I just turn on intercept, oh yeah, I can already see it's going through and we're getting a request. So once again, don't know if that's going to come in handy, but we'll keep it open in case we do. Looking at this website, I'm hovering my mouse over here to see if there's anything interesting going on about these. And I can see by looking in the bottom left corner, these all just go to home. So there's nothing built into this. We have a shop our favorite Mega Big Tech products, but I don't see any tools for actually shopping, pulling up a cart, or anything like that. Scroll, scroll, scroll. We do have some information here, although that just goes to, that's static as well. It doesn't bring us to anything. It seems all of this is static, so we don't have like a shopping cart or anything like that. And one thing to check when things are static, especially if we think about an S3 bucket, if you consider an S3 bucket, S3 buckets can be used to host static websites. So sometimes if you look at the source code, you might be able to see the bucket. So let's go ahead and check this out. If we just right click and view page source, let's see if my hunch is correct. And it is. So we have this right here. We know this is an S3 bucket because of the name that's in it. And if you're new to AWS, you're like, what the heck is an S3 bucket? It's just a place to store files. I like to think of it of kind of like FTP for the cloud. So if you're used to a traditional CTF and you see that port 21 is open for FTP, there's really two things that you check. Number one, you see, can I access the FTP server anonymously? And if you can, is there any interesting files that are there? Well, it's the same with an S3 bucket. When there's an S3 bucket, one of the first things you can try is saying, hey, can I access the S3 bucket without credentials? And if so, you might be able to list files and find sensitive information. The other thing to check is if yes, you can, what an FTP server, at least what I do is I see, can I write to the FTP server? Because I've had a few times where the FTP server is actually hosting the website. And if you can write to the FTP server, you can write a web shell and then get shell access. Well, it's the same with an S3 bucket. You want to ask the question, can I write to the S3 bucket? Because if you can actually upload a malicious script, which I demonstrated in a video I released earlier this week about how I leveraged a writable S3 bucket, and I used that writable S3 bucket to hijack a script to embed JavaScript to do a cross-site scripting attack, and we stole an admin session ID by hijacking a writable S3 bucket. So if you want to see that attack in action, check out that video that I released. I think I released it on Monday. But we do see we have an S3 bucket here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Maybe I'm going to zoom in. There we go. And I need to get my screenshot tool open up on my host machine. People often ask what I use for screenshots. I use Lightshot is what I use for screenshots. So let's grab a screenshot of this for our notes. We have found the S3 bucket here hosting the static website. So we'll go to our notes here, drop that, and just so we don't have to keep going back, we will grab the link to the S3 bucket as well, copy the link address, and we'll drop it in there. So then the S3 bucket's name would be Mega Big Tech. The .s3.amazonaws.com for the full URL is just the standard URL, but the name of the actual S3 bucket is Mega Big Tech. And let's just go ahead and navigate to that and see, like, if I back out, can I list files? I get access denied there. What if I go here? So I can list files, but that's not necessarily a vulnerability because this is just hosting a static web server. So unless it's going to have something sensitive here, that's probably not going to be super helpful for us, and just looking at it doesn't look sensitive. But I also want to show you another way that you can list buckets with the console. If you have the AWS CLI installed, and if you don't, I think it's just sudo apt install AWS CLI, but I do have it installed. And I obviously don't even know how to do version. But AWS version, I have it installed. But one way to list an S3 bucket anonymously is AWS S3, then ls, just like in Linux, a list command, then S3 again, because AWS likes to be confusing. And then we want to grab the name of our bucket, which is Mega Big Tech. And then we'll do no sign request. What no sign request means, hey, try this as an anonymous user and see if we can list the bucket. And you can see we are, but the only thing we can list is images. And then we can see the different images, but nothing sensitive here, nothing that stands out to me. We're not going to download them and do some silly CTF steganography type stuff because Pwned Labs isn't annoying. And I highly doubt we have to use steganography to complete this lab. Let's go back to our scenario. Remember, it did say that this isn't suitable for a CTF approach, so we probably are going to have to look at the walkthrough, but I still want to mess around with this myself. We want to use the IP to pinpoint the AWS account ID via public S3 bucket. So we have a public S3 bucket right here. So then we have to figure out, can we get the AWS account from the S3 bucket? So let's go ahead and read about that. We'll just type in get AWS account from S3 bucket and see what research has been done on this particular thing. And, you know, maybe there's a tool. Let's append it with GitHub. Okay, this actually looks like a promising tool. S3 account search. This tool lets you find the account ID an S3 bucket belongs to, which, hey, that sounds exactly like what we are trying to do. For this to work, you need to have at least one of these permissions. Permission to download a known file and to list the contents, which we do have both of those permissions. Additionally, you'll need a role that can assume with one of these permissions in the bucket you're examining. So you need your own AWS account, in other words, which I bet that's the reason they gave us creds here. So I bet these credentials are for like our own AWS account, not like a compromised account. Well, I'll know when I look at the walkthrough, but I bet that's why we're given these. Often, some AWS policies, you can bypass some things by using your own AWS account. And I'm guessing Pwned Labs is just being nice to us and saying, hey, you don't have to use your own AWS account. We'll spin one up for you. Let me go ahead and just see if that is the case. The way we can connect to an AWS account is we'll do AWS configure, and then we can give it a profile. And we'll just call this Hack Smarter, and then it's going to prompt us for our access key ID, so that's sort of like our username. And once again, I think this is our own AWS account, not the one that the bucket is in. Instead, this is what we're going to run our tool out of, because then we'll have the permissions to run the tool. But you could also just use your own AWS account if you have a free tier AWS account. Let me go ahead and copy the secret. We'll drop it in here, and we'll just use US East 1 for default region because that's what I always use. And now we're going to take a drink of water. Now that we have our drink of water, we want to run the who am I command in AWS. Now in Linux, it's really easy, right? In Linux, you just type who am I. Same with Windows. Well, AWS hates us. So AWS makes everything more complicated. To run a who am I command in AWS, we have to do this, right? Let me just clear my screen. We have to do AWS, STS, get caller identity, profile, hack smarter. See, I told you freaking AWS hates us and wants to confuse us on the syntax. But that will allow us to do this. And it calls us the S3 user. Can we do AWS S3 LS profile hack smarter? This allows us to list any S3 buckets that might be in our account. And okay, we can't list buckets. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this account right here is different than the account that we're targeting. Pwned Labs is giving us this account just so we have access to an account to run tools in, like this tool right here. So let's see how this tool works. This package is available on PyPy. You can, for example, use one of these commands. Pipx is recommended. And yes, let's use pipx because that will do it in a Python virtual environment and it won't break stuff in our environment. So we'll use pipx to install that. And while it installs, let's see how we can do this. So with a bucket, so S3 account search, are we passing it our role that we have, or start from a specified source profile? So I'm guessing this account is the account of my S3 bucket. Oh, sorry, Wizar. I'll keep that in mind. Wizar over on YouTube said, please don't clear screen. I know it's cringe, but we're following along. My bad, my friend. Thank you for letting me know. I'll make sure I don't do that. At least I'll try not to. It's just my habit to click clear, but I'll try not to do that. So how this works, let's understand this so we're not just script kiddies firing stuff off. There's an IAM policy condition S3 resource account that is meant to be used to give access to S3 in specified accounts, but also supports wildcards. By constructing the right patterns and seeing which ones will lead to a deny or an allow, we can determine the account ID by discovering it one digit at a time. So we're just like brute forcing the account ID based on the response. We verify that we can access the object or bucket with the provided role. We assume the same role again, but this time add a policy that restricts our access to S3 buckets that exists in an account stream with 0. If our access is allowed, we know that the account ID has to start with 0. If the request is denied, we try again with 1 as the first digit. We keep incrementing until our request is allowed and we find the first digit. Repeat this process for every digit using our discovered digits as a prefix. Okay. Well, it kind of makes sense. Let's see. Here is our ARN, which I think that's the information that we need if we look at this tool. So I'm actually just going to copy the syntax here. We'll copy that and we'll open up just our handy dandy Kali version of Notepad and we'll paste in our syntax. So let's go ahead and get our syntax right here. So when we ran the AWS S3 get caller identity, it gives us the ARN. This is a unique identifier for our account here. So I think that is what we're doing. Although it says role, I wonder if doing user should work fine as well. And then we want to give it our bucket that we're trying to get access to. And our bucket, remember, is mega big tech, this bucket right here. I might totally be messing up this syntax, but let's give it a shot and just see what happens. Do I need to pass it my profile though? Yeah, okay, let's do profile. Okay. An error occurred when calling the assume role operation. Is not authorized to perform assume role on the resource. Okay. I might have to look at the walkthrough because maybe I'm misunderstanding the AWS account that we are using. Let me also go to handy dandy ChatGPT here. Commands to enumerate roles in an AWS account. Just give me CLI commands. Don't explain stuff. So yeah, we can't list roles before I look at the walkthrough. Like I said, it is meant, the walkthrough is what you're supposed to use. So I'm kind of approaching this in the wrong way, but I think if you struggle yourself through it, you learn a little bit better. So what's this one? Sample code to find an AWS account ID of an S3 bucket using this technique. This code expects to be able to assume a role S3 find account. Do not run the code in anything other than the VPC express secure for this purpose, as it will break existing connectivity S3. Okay, gotcha. So, I mean, this is a similar thing. I mean, this is very similar to the tool we were just using, this We Are Cloud R. What were the other syntax? So no, we have to be able to use the role. All right, let me look at the walkthrough. Since, once again, not suitable for a CTF approach, which is what I'm doing, so I'm sure I'm missing something a little bit obvious here. So let's kind of go through this. If a hacker gets their hands on AWS Account ID, they can try to figure out IAM roles, which we'll come back to that once you get access. Okay, let's back up. Walkthrough. If you want to attempt this without reading the walkthrough, feel free. Okay, here's what we needed. Here's our role. The IAM user credentials you need are included in the entry point, and the role you consume is this. This is the information we needed. Okay, perfect. So I should have just at least read along to that part, and let's see if we can do some of this rest on just our own. So we have now this role. Let's go back to the command that, I'm not going to clear, sorry. Well, I mean, it's just junk on my screen now, so probably isn't helpful, but we'll still leave it here. Let's go back to the command that we were doing before, but let's replace with our leaky bucket role, as that was the key piece I was missing here about the role I need to assume, and let's hit enter. That's working. So remember, it's brute forcing through here, trying to find the account ID. And it's actually going faster than I would think, but I suppose it's only 10 digits that it has to brute force, so it wouldn't take terribly long to get the account ID, but it seems to be working. Ladies and gentlemen, we are actually getting somewhere. And we will allow it to do its thing. Curious, for those of you in chat, hey, we're done. Who's all doing this with me? I know a few of you are. Let me know in chat if you're working through this lab alongside of me. Would love to hear from you. Know how many people are doing this with me. I'm going to grab this for my notes. And so we have our syntax that we used. And then we'll also grab a screenshot of this, copy, and drop that beast into Cherry Tree. And we found the account ID, but I'm guessing we now need to enumerate this account. So let's do some digging on it. What kind of things can we do to enumerate this account? Let's go over to ChatGPT. What are some ways to enumerate an AWS account with just the account ID? Jeffrey Allen said, any resources that you recommend for learning how to write better reports for pen testing? Yes, Hack the Box Academy has a very excellent module on report writing for pen testing, so you can check that out. It's in their pen tester job role path. I also believe Black Hills InfoSec did a webcast not too long ago all about writing pen test reports. Let me see if that's right. Let me do Black Hills InfoSec pen test report writing webcast. Okay, yeah, so if you literally just Google this, you can see they have part 1, part 2, part 3, a bunch of stuff here from Black Hills InfoSec about writing web app pen testing. Jeffrey Allen, I think you will find that information helpful. Okay, so what we might infer, public resources. So S3 bucket naming, we already have that. Public resources, occasionally, some resources might be publicly exposed, such as an S3 bucket configured for public access. Isn't directly related to account ID, but rather poor configuration practice. Simply access to these without authorization is unethical. This is for a pen test. How can I use the AWS CLI with my own AWS account to check public resources? blah, 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 blah. Too verbose. Just give me the CLI command. No, that's not what I mean, you silly robot. That's not what I mean. You don't get what I'm asking about, ChatGPT. So, what ChatGPT, maybe I should explain this. This is how we do pen tests. Like when I do an AWS pen test, it's not almost always. I mean, it's always from like an assumed breach perspective. So I'm not usually approaching an AWS account from a total unauthenticated standpoint. When you do an AWS pen test, you generally get access to 2 roles inside of the client's AWS account. You usually have a read-only role where you can do a global read-only of all their resources. It's more of an audit role. So you can audit the AWS environment looking for misconfigurations. And they'll also give you a role that would match like a developer. Because when you hear about breaches, what often happens is the group breaches an account for developer, and then from the developer account they elevate their privileges or they pillage data. So that's how we approach AWS pen testing: a global read-only and a developer role. So you're not usually having to break in from the outside unless it's more of a red team engagement, which I think is what this lab is trying to simulate. It's a red team engagement. We're doing information gathering. We have a public S3 bucket. With the public S3 bucket, we have now located their account ID, and now we want to see from their account ID what kind of resources can we get to. So let me just do like enumerate public resources by AWS account ID. Look at that. The greatest pen testing firm has a blog about this, Rhino Security Labs. Oh, this is what we just did. We did already enumerate that. Enumerate users to update assume role policy. We almost need access to the council, I think, right? So this is to enumerate IAM users, but I think what we need to do, and this is using a word list, so we could spray a word list at it, is do it from, we need to find public resources. Let me jump back to this. Oh, the flag in this lab is the AWS account ID. Oh, wait, that's the flag. Am I done? Am I taking this a step further? Hold up. I might just be done. Maybe this is all we have to do. I'm like overworking the lab, but let me see is this the flag? Guys, I did it. I was just taking it a step further and was trying to do like, now that we have an account ID, what more information can we do? And I was thinking with the account ID, we could check public resources, and that's what I was attempting to do. But we did it. That's all it was to it. Let's read through the walkthrough and figure out how to fix this. So enumeration, let's start by scanning the IP. Just don't do it live on stream and have a bunch of other people scan it at the same time because you might crash the web server. This reveals Mega Big Tech, which we did. We found the S3 bucket. We inspected it, and I did the same thing. It wasn't too interesting. We were able to get it. So let me read through this a little bit better. With the S3 bucket name, we can attempt to get the ID of the AWS account it's hosted in. Research by Ben revealed that it's possible to quickly brute force the AWS account ID of an S3 bucket, which is exactly what we did. And I'm proud of us, y'all. We discovered this on our own. Like, we found the tool and we ran it and figured out how to use this. Reading this research post and also reviewing the code here is recommended. But a TLDR is that this script creates a policy that utilizes the new S3 resource account policy. Condition key to evaluate whether to grant us access to an S3 bucket based on the account that the bucket belongs to. Fortunately, the script doesn't have to guess 1 trillion different account IDs to find the right one. The available search space is massively reduced by leveraging string matching and wildcards. Each correctly matched digit is appended to a variable, and the request is repeated until the account ID is found. And we actually saw the tool doing that right there. We have provided a user with a role, and that's where I was stuck for a while because I didn't realize they gave us a role, but they did, that leaky bucket role. Once we had that role, it was easy to figure it out. But like, once again, guys, here's why I recommend not looking at the walkthrough right away and just like struggling through it, because when you're learning, especially cloud stuff, there's no such thing as a rabbit hole. Sometimes when you do CTFs, there are rabbit holes that waste your time, but in the cloud, y'all, there's so much to learn, so many things to discover, that if you fall into a rabbit hole doing a rather simple lab like this one, you might just discover a new like threat model, a new way to attack an AWS account. So as long as you're learning, there's no such thing as a rabbit hole. So if it takes you 3 hours to do a 10-minute lab because you decided to do it on your own and go deeper into it, that's like going beyond root. I think a good example of that is 0xDF, the person who works at Hack the Box. He has like that blog where he gives written walkthroughs. He always has a section called Beyond Root where he goes a little bit deeper. So would always encourage you when you do labs, whether it's this platform or another one, always take it a step further and continue to do research on whatever you discovered. But anyways, the role that our users are allowed to assume would have the following policy attached, which that leaky bucket role did, and we were able to do that. For the last of the RAB, we'll use our existing user, and I was right. That user was a user in another AWS account. We could have made our own user in our own AWS account, but there we go. I showed how to do that already. We did this, and then we use pipx, which they use S3 account search. Hey, I showed off a different tool, and I like showing alternative ways of doing. No, it is S3 account search. Never mind. It is the same tool. I was thinking it was the Python script, but no, we did that. We just used pipx to install it. The difference, y'all, is what pipx does is it installs it in a Python virtual environment. Sometimes as you install different tools via pip, they might have different dependencies that might break other tools. But if you use pipx, it installs each tool in its own virtual environment, including the dependencies that it needs. So that's why I use pipx when you are watching me. But we did that to install S3 account search. Next, we need to provide the ARN of the role under our control, which we did. And yeah, we did that exact thing and we found the role. This reviews the account ID. We can use this information to hunt down public resources. So look, I was actually doing kind of the right thing the next step. I had that thought as well. Now that we have the account ID, how can we find public resources? Oh, so it's actually going to show us how to do this. So there is, let's follow along with this. So although we're done with the lab, it's going to show us apparently from the CLI how to hunt this down. So it says, first, it would be good to know the AWS region that the S3 bucket was created in, as public snapshots are available to all users in the same region that the EBS or RDS snapshot was created in. Jay Money said, is this Thunderdome? Nope, Thunderdome does not release till April, and Thunderdome is really cool. You'll see it in April. It's likely that if the S3 bucket was created in a specific region, that other resources will be available there too. So all they're doing is a curl request for that bucket that we found. And in our curl request of the S3 bucket, you can see that the bucket region actually tells us in US East 1. So that means as we look at other resources, if you're new to AWS, you create resources, at least most of them region specific. So you cannot find backups if you're looking at US West 2 if they're located in US East 1. Whereas if their S3 bucket was created in US East 1, it's likely they have other public resources in US East 1. So that's why we're checking that first. And we have US East 1. In the response headers, we see that the header is set to US East 1, which is North Virginia. Next, log into the AWS Management Console in your own personal AWS account and make sure US East 1 region is selected. Okay, I'm going to go to just sharing my face for a second while I log in because I don't think I have a password manager in the VM. So I might have to jump to my host machine and grab my password for my AWS account. Give me just a second. Okay. We are logged in here to my personal AWS account, my Tyler Sandbox account. So now that we're here, make sure US region or US East is selected, which it is. I already have that selected. That's my default region. Then search for the EC2 service, okay, which it's there. In the left-hand menu, select snapshots under the Elastic Block Store menu item. Oh gosh, I gotta sneeze. I'm trying not to sneeze into my microphone. All right. In the left-hand menu, select snapshots under the Elastic Block Store, which, you know, snapshots at least make sense. But, like, I don't know why AWS has to be cute with all their names. Like EC2, if you're new to this, that just means a virtual machine. Why can't they just call it a virtual machine like what Azure does? And a snapshot at least makes sense. But Elastic Block Store, freaking call it a normal name. My goodness. But okay, we click snapshots. My AWS rant is over. Paste a discovered AWS account ID into the field and hit enter/return. So that's how we can discover public resources, is this way. Okay, very cool, very interesting. We're going to change this to public snapshots, I would think, and put in our account ID. Oh no, what's it doing? It's freaking out. Why is it freaking out? You guys see that? Oh, do I need to do owner? Owner equals that. Hey, look at that. We actually have a snapshot here. Now, we could actually download this snapshot and mount it and then search it for sensitive information. But it's 8 gigabytes. I'm not going to download it to my VM because it would take a long time to do that. But it's quite easy, actually, to do that. There's a tool created by Rhino, actually, that allows you to download EBS snapshots and then search through them for sensitive information, which I can actually show you that tool. Like I said, I'm not going to do it, but looting EBS snapshots, I bet Rhino's going to pop up. Oh, we have this one. You can use Pwned to do this, or there's a standalone EBS snapshot tool that you can download these snapshots and enumerate them for information. Okay. At least I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah, here we go. Here's what I used on another lab. So there's a tool created by Rhino. It's in Pwned, and you can do it there as well. Otherwise, there's a standalone tool called DSnap. But when I did it, I used the EBS download snapshots Pwned module. So maybe I can actually show you how this begins. I'm just not going to do the full download. So if I go, let me look at the syntax that we are doing here, if I can remember it. The first thing that we'll, of course, do is open up Pwned. So we can use Pwned. We'll just do a new session, and we'll just call this S3 for this session. And we're going to import our keys that we set up, which that's our profile. And we did the HackSmarter profile. And if we search for EBS, we can see we have this EBS Explore Snapshots, restores and attaches EBS volumes to an EC2 instance of your choice, or we can download snapshots. So if we use EBS download snapshots, actually, can I do help? I should know this. Yeah, here we go. So this module uses the EBS direct IP to download specific snapshots to your computer. These can then be mounted and explored either using Docker or Vagrant. You can actually do it right in your Linux VM. So you can actually mount it right here in your Linux VM. For more information how to mount these snapshots, go here. But we can we give it our snapshot ID in our region. So then if we run EBS download snapshots, we can do snapshot ID, and we would grab the snapshot ID from our AWS account right here. So this is this snapshot ID of that publicly exposed snapshot, and that's cool. Of course, it didn't actually copy because, you know, it's AWS and nothing can be easy with AWS. There we go. And then our region of US East 1. And we hit enter, and it says an error occurred when calling the list snapshot block operation. The S3 user is not authorized. Oh, so the issue that we're running into is I'd have to set it up with my own account. Our user right here, like just our Pwned Labs kind of test user himself or herself, doesn't have access to do this, but in our own S3 account, we would be able to, but I'm not going to configure my personal AWS account profile and everything on stream right now, because then you guys could use my account ID in secret to get access to my account. But this is how you would actually download it, and it would take quite a while to download because it is 8 gigabytes, but then it's just a .image. So you can create a mount point and then mount the image and then enumerate that snapshot for sensitive information. And there's actually a lab on that. So maybe, is this a free one? Is this a free one? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do this lab maybe in another stream to walk through that full process. But okay, although AWS account IDs are not considered to be particularly sensitive, and oftentimes account IDs are available on public documentation or code, knowing the account ID of an org you are assessing the security of could be helpful. So you can imagine in a red team engagement where you have a longer timeline, maybe 3 months or 6 months of your scope that you're assessing this organization, a lot of it is spent information gathering and enumeration. And once you know the account ID, you could do this exact thing. Look for public resources owned by your target organization, download them and pillage them for sensitive information that might give you a deeper foothold into the environment. In terms of detection, the STS actions take place in the account of the person attempting to find the account ID, which won't be visible to the bucket owner's account. However, it is possible to enable S3 data events for additional costs. In other words, the victim isn't going to know you're doing this unless they do something additional for it, because it's only going to be logged in your personal AWS account. Also, as mentioned, the flag in this lab is the AWS account ID associated with the S3 bucket, which I discovered, after going down my own little rabbit holes. But even my rabbit hole, guys, I was doing the right thing. For an additional challenge, see if you can find the CLI command to list public EBS snapshots that were created in the AWS account. All right. Let's do this. We'll copy that. I think it's just list EBS. I don't even know. Freaking fun killer chat GPT saying, make sure you have permission. This won't be filtered by account ID. Really? Can't you query for it? Wow, so you'd have to list all of them. You can't just filter it in the CLI. That seems kind of strange. I mean, we did in the console. It was easy to do it that way. But the additional challenge, is doing it in the CLI. So you'd have to pipe it to another command. Yeah, and grep for that. I wonder if this would take forever. Oh my gosh, I don't have... It's going to make me set up my own credentials. All right, I'm going to, just because it tells me this is the additional challenge. I have to do the additional challenge. So I'm going to just share my face for a moment, and I need to generate some access keys for my account. Just don't want to share my access keys with all of you. My account is not an account for all of you to use, but I will show you how to do this. Let me just get to the right area. Want to make sure it's not going to show anything sensitive before I show exactly how to do this. Do I have any access keys? Security credentials. Okay, let me just deactivate these. 1 second, I'm just deactivating some other access keys, and I'll actually walk you through the process. Is it really going to make me type it? I need to deactivate it first. I'll walk you through the process of creating your own access keys in your own AWS account, just in case you want to follow along yourself. but you don't know how to do that. So let me just get everything in my AWS account ready, and then I'll show you guys how to do that. I'm just not going to give you my access keys. My AWS account isn't your AWS account. All right, let me go back out to dashboard. All right. So when you're in AWS, which you can see right here, if you want to create access keys so you can use a CLI from your own account, the way that we're going to do that is to click I am right here, which I am is like your user. So we'll click I am. And then we will go ahead and click users. And your user probably isn't named Tyler, but we're going to grab this Tyler user. And what we're going to do is go to security credentials. And we want to generate access key. So we're going to click create access key in order to create them, but I'm not going to share with you my secret. So now we're going to go back to looking at my face. Oh, actually, I can show you the next part. So when you go to access keys, you just want to do CLI, the command line interface. So that's what you'll select. But back to my face real quick while I do that. And I'm going to click next. Call it Pwned Labs. I'm going to create my access key. And then it will create the access key. It'll only show you the secret once. So you want to make sure you get that copied. And now what I'm doing is just configuring it like you saw me do the first time. When I configured the access key and the secret, I'm just doing it for my own personal account. I just look into OBS, make sure I'm not actually sharing my screen while I do this. All right. Go back to AWS. All right. I have things configured. Although, sorry, I'm going to go back to sharing my face one more time. Here we go. All right, we have this, but I'm not going to use the profile hack smarter because I configured the main profile to be my actual AWS account. I think this will work now because I should have full permissions to do everything. Let's see if it does. Okay, so freaking ChatGPT is silly. The filter null is invalid. Come on, ChatGPT. Let me just try this myself. EC2 describe snapshots. I think we would have to do the query. Oops. Can I just do owner ID first? Okay. Yeah, I can do it better than ChatGPT. So if we do that, and then we just grep for that account ID, is this the one that they wanted us to do? Or was it a different one? I think this is the one. Geez, there must be a faster way to do this, don't you guys think? This would work, but like I said before, it's going to go through all of the public snapshots until it finds the one that we are looking for. There has to be a more efficient way of doing this. There just has to be. Let's see, AWS. It's described. Oh, actually, it found it. Okay, so I guess it's not terrible. So then we just have to figure out what can we all query. So we could do snapshot ID, maybe. Can I do owner ID, snapshot ID, like that, maybe? And then grep for that account ID, and then it should show us a snapshot ID of that account ID. Or I guess I could just query. Can I query based on? No, ChatGPT claims I can't query based on owner ID. I can't do like owner ID equals. Oh, look, I did it anyways. I figured it out myself. Boom. So that is how you would use the command line. No thanks to ChatGPT, which gave me a convoluted command that didn't freaking work, but did it manually. That is how you would use the AWS from the command line interface to query for, hey, I want all of the available snapshots for this account ID. Otherwise, you can do it from the console. But if you only have the CLI, this would be one way that we could query for public resources in an account. So cool. We took that lab totally a step further in multiple ways, but I don't know about you guys. I actually learned a lot just by stumbling our way through that. And just want to point out again, this is a completely free lab. The other thing I like to do is see the further reading, which, hey, we already discovered a lot of this. Let's look at this, an account ID from an attacker's perspective. This would be interesting. Jeffrey said, will this be on YouTube later? Yep, all my videos like this will end up on YouTube. It'll probably get posted early next week. This would be interesting. So what can an attacker do? You're an attacker. Determining an AWS account ID is one of your first steps to attack an AWS environment. In this post, we will discuss what they are, what they're useful for. We know an ID is, but why would I want to find them? So understanding AWS account, finding misconfigured IAM principles. You could probably use that brute force tool by Rhino to find IAM principles if we used a word list. Determine which services are used and different third-party services with access. Tools like QuietRide and Paku, what? Told you guys, are great for doing this in a scalable and automated way. All you need is a good word list of role names, just like what I was talking about. You'll also leave no trace of reconnaissance because, once again, it's all in your own logs, not your target logs. You're only limited by AWS API rate limits, but even that can be scaled by opening more AWS accounts. You can have 10 in your org. So how do I find them? Well, you can find them in GitHub, different places. We found it via an S3 bucket, which I think is a cool and realistic way to find one. It actually talks about it right there. And you can find access key, blah, blah. If you can find resources in many ways, for example, the repositories. So this is just showing how to find it. But we showed you some ways you can also attack it by using that information to query for public resources in your target account. You could download the snapshot, enumerate the snapshot, and then see what sensitive information might be there. But hey, y'all, that is the end of this video. I do want to thank all of you on YouTube for watching this video with me. Hopefully you did the lab alongside of me. If you didn't, hey, go ahead and give the lab a shot now. It's completely free. You have nothing to lose. Create a free account of Pwned Labs and check out this lab and do it on your own. You can learn a lot by watching a video, but you learn even more by getting hands-on keyboard yourself and working through the different labs. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.